As mentioned, my name is Kasper, меня зовут Kasper, and today I'll be talking to you about how to handle VCs. Now, does everybody know what a VC is, a venture capitalist? So far, So today I'll be talking about kind of my experiences on a VC myself at Superhero Capital, and we'll be talking a bit about kind of what VCs look for, a few example questions, tough questions that we might ask, and what do we actually look for in the team or the idea. And at the end, I'll give a few quotes from our deal flow that we've seen on stuff what not to say. But maybe the easiest way to explain kind of Superhero Capital and what we do is that Superhero Capital is to founders what Alfred is to Batman, the help from behind the scenes. And we're based in Helsinki, Finland. Currently, we have 21 portfolio companies, most of them in Finland, but one in the States, one in Sweden, one in Latvia, and one in Estonia. And I'll be talking especially about kind of the early stage VCs and their mentality when you only have a business idea, a team, but not so much traction yet. So understanding the VC model, talking to VCs, what VCs look for and what not to say. So understanding the VC model, but before kind of talking to VCs, I think it's really important to understand how the industry itself works. Well, what are kind of the building blocks and how the funding cycles go in different types of funds. So what's the difference between an angel investor and a VC? There's one crucial difference. An angel investor is investing their own money, while a VC is investing someone else's capital. And there's a very big difference there because you can do whatever you want with your own money. There's really no one actually kind of telling you what to do or looking. You're not responsible for anyone in a way. But VCs are responsible to a bunch of LPs, limited partners, which basically means the people who have invested in the VC fund. And that's like the basic difference that's really crucial to understand. And how VCs differ, how the funds differ, they differ in size. So we have a 20 million fund currently. Then the funds might go up to a few billion, and SoftBank's Vision Fund is a 100 billion fund. And their strategies differ based on that. But for, say, a 20 million fund, our typical investment size for the first investment is 200 to 500,000 euros. And other than that, they differ on focus as well. Some funds might invest in crypto only. Some funds, like ours, we invest in B2B businesses, B2B tech businesses. Other funds might have cybersecurity or something similar. So the focus also depends on the fund itself. So what might be a good fund for one startup necessarily is a really, really bad fund for another startup. And the lifespan. So typically funds work in a 10-year cycle. So when a VC raises a fund, they have 10 years to return the capital to investors. And when you have a startup, I think this is really crucial to understand that if you're raising funding from a VC that's already been 4 years in the fund cycle, you only have 6 years to return the capital. And the profile, are they an investor that takes the lead, or are they an investor that only co-invests when someone else invests? So there are different types there as well. But regardless of the amount invested, typically VCs want 15 to 25% of the company per round. If it's later stage, it might be closer to 25, but really in the early stage, it's more often than not closer to 15. Because, I mean, equity is one of the biggest chips for founders, the biggest motivational chip for founders. So it's better to take a little bit less during the early stage so you're able to build a company, an investable company, so that you can raise around B or C. And basically a fund works in a way, as mentioned, the 10-year cycle. 4 years, the first 4 years is an investment period where you can invest in new startups. And the last 6 years, you can invest more only into the startups that you've already invested in. So you can't invest in new startups anymore. And more often than not, it's about 50% of the capital of a VC fund is invested in the first 4 years, and 50% is saved to the best performing teams during the last 6 years. So it's like, you know, playing poker in a way. When you have a great hand, you put all your chips in. So let's say that a VC firm has 30 companies. After 5, 6 years, they're not going to give all those 30 extra capital. They're going to put them in the 1, 2, or maximum 3 companies that are doing that are farthest in their business. So everyone kind of understands now how kind of the VC fund cycle works. So it's someone else's capital, and it's basically like managing a bigger hedge fund as well. So very similar concept. And then, you probably can't see it, but there's, I want to illustrate a point here. There's smart money and there's dumb money. And smart money is something, an investor that gives you something else than capital. And that's an investor that all of you who have started should look for as well. So don't look for someone that only gives capital and just waits for the returns. You need to have something else. Typically it's help with the business development, help with contacts, help in hiring, help in building a tech team, helping with numbers, KPIs, helping with the business model. But remember, if you take capital from an investor, if you take an investment, think what else can you get from them? Because there's an abundance of capital in the world. But there isn't an abundance of truly valuable resources for startups. So what do kind of us VCs look for? And I'm not going to go really into details about, you know, what type of idea or what type of product. I'm going to talk more about a general feeling of the company and the team itself. So your idea is basically worthless. Unfortunately so. Ideas are generally worthless. Investors would rather invest in a great team with a really, really bad idea than a bad team with the best idea in the world. Because no matter how good the idea is or how bad the idea is, if it's a great team, you can always pivot. You can always change the idea. But if it's a bad team, it's really, really hard to change the team. So investors would rather invest in a great team with a bad idea than a bad team with a great idea. And it's really the squad that counts. It's the people doing it. And typically VCs, we love teams that can execute. And by this, we mean that you have an ability to actually get stuff done, not only talk. And a lot of you know Dropbox. They were the, I think, 11th or 12th same idea in the world. There's nothing new technologically. There was 11, 12 companies before that did exactly the same thing. So how the hell did they beat everyone? They were better at executing the business. And this is really what counts, especially in the early stage teams. You have to prove that you're able to execute. And a team that knows the market. You know, when all these young entrepreneurs that the media raises to a pedestal and says, oh yeah, this 20-something-year-old set up a billion-dollar company. There are just a few exceptions that we all hear about. But in reality, most billion-dollar startups are founded by people over the age of 35. And that's because they have knowledge of the market. They have knowledge of whatever market dynamics their respective industry has and how to change those as well. And a team that wants to learn. Now, I really like the quote that you know nothing yet. And when you understand that and keep that mentality, that's how you're able to get closer to product market fit. That's how you're able to understand your customers faster. But that's actually a lot harder than it sounds, to admit that you know nothing yet. And also a team that can take critique. All of you know people that when you give them critique, there are two types of people. Some take it well and adapt, change their behavior, and some go on the defensive. Hey, no, you're wrong, no. If you're not able to take critique, how can you be able to grow? And I know these are very soft skills in a way, but the best entrepreneurs have these qualities, regardless of the business idea itself and how good that is. And a team that has passion. I mean, how can an investor get excited about what you do and invest in you if you don't look like you're excited about what you do yourself? And you have to show it in your own way. There's no one answer how to show passion. There's no one way to do it. But all of you know when you see someone that's really passionate about something, all of you can see it somewhere in between the lines. And a team that answers the question. What are your numbers? Someone say, oh, we have a bit of traction and we have this and that and that. The more straightforward, concise, and clear you are, the better the kind of starting relationship with an investor is. So then, talking to VCs, typically what types of questions we ask, or what do we look for when we're meeting teams? So there's one thing to understand. Most VCs are generalists. They know a bit about everything, but they're not an expert in anything, in a way. This is the profile of a VC. They're managing a fund. They have 20 startups. They need to know a bit about every market. But entrepreneurs are experts in that one particular thing. So when you're talking to VCs, I know in a lot of entrepreneurs' heads, they're thinking, hey, I have to explain every single thing and every little piece of information. But remember, VCs are, more often than not, a lot dumber than you are in your particular market. They know some of the market dynamics, but they're not experts. And that's something to remember. I like this picture that describes the number of topics and the difficulty in a scientist. So in a way, entrepreneurs are the scientists. They know something really, really well. And VCs are these guys. And this is really, really key to remember when you're talking to a VC. So you can't jump right away here and explain, hey, this is what we do. Especially I've noticed in Russia and Finland, there's very, very deep technical talent. So when a deep tech company talks to a VC, they jump right there. But it's no use if you don't understand the basics of what you're doing. And then questions VCs ask. So what type of questions? I have 3 examples. What's your big vision? Why are you doing this? Not what you do or how you do it, but why. And having a good answer to this question is why some companies are able to sell products a lot more than others. This is a great example. Musician, it's a Finnish company, the largest music teaching service in the world. Essentially, they're making a Guitar Hero for iPad, but you can play your real guitar, real ukulele, real piano, real bass, and they teach you music. But the way they explain their vision is this. 200 years ago, only a few people knew how to read. It was meant for the cream of the crop. Nowadays, almost everyone knows how to read. But nowadays, musicality and playing music is like literacy 200 years ago. It's only meant for the few, the artists and the singers. But musicians' goal is to make musicality as commonplace as literacy. You understand? Yeah. They're not talking about what they do. They don't mention a guitar, they don't mention an iPad, they don't mention an app. Making music as commonplace as literacy, or musicality as commonplace as literacy. And there's a difference there. So what's your big vision? Even if you don't have a startup, if you're working for a company, what's your big vision? Why are you doing what you're doing? And this is one of my favorite questions. There's not a right answer to this. Why is your team better than any other team with the same set of CVs? You've seen some of the pitches. We have a combine of 55 years of experience in this industry. So what? We have a combine of 150 years experience in almost whatever we want in this room. Why is your team better than any other team with the same set of CVs? And I've seen a few good answers to this question. One I heard in a pitch in 2014 at Slush. It's like Startup Village, but in Finland in November. And there was a team that was pitching and said, our team was able to take this piece of paper and in half a year, turn it into a product that saved 30% of our first client's marketing costs. You don't say anything about your experience or where you're good at, but you know that the team can execute. So in what way is your team better than any other team with the same set of CVs? And my favorite, hypothetically, you're going to fail. Why? And this is a question where some entrepreneurs, no, on the defensive. That means you're not able to look at what you're doing from a third perspective, from kind of the eagle-eye view. And this is a question that, or these kind of questions are meant to, figure out if the team can execute, if they know the market, if they're able to take critique. Essentially, this is the same question as, what's the biggest challenge right now? Why would you fail? What's kind of the biggest challenge you need to overcome? But if you ask it in this way, you actually get to know a bit deeper the character of the entrepreneur, which is really what counts. And then KPIs, key performance indicators, numbers. When you're talking to VCs, we love numbers, especially if it's B2B SaaS. Data tells us what happened, insight tells us why and what to do. And we ask numbers not because we just like asking them, but if you're measuring what you're doing and using analytics, that's when we're more confident as VCs that the entrepreneurs actually are able to learn more about their customers and learn faster than the rest. And I like to kind of describe it as a three-step process. There's data, analytics, and through analytics you get insight. And I don't want to go too detailed into the numbers, but here's some kind of basic numbers that we might ask. So what's your monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue? What's your lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, stuff like that. These are the basics. Then if you're measuring conversion, so how many people from your website are converting into a free trial? How many people from the free trial are converting into a paid subscription? And the more you measure this, the better you are at understanding your customers. And after you have kind of the conversions measured, you really get insight when you start separating them into cohorts. Cohort is a really fancy word. I don't like it myself. It essentially means a group of people with a similar characteristic. So you can have size-based cohorts, customers that pay over $1,000 a year for you. You can have time-based cohorts, people who signed up last week, or segment-based cohorts, people who speak Russian, people who speak Finnish, people who speak English, or are using the language, that particular language in an app. But measuring all this, this is just to let us know that you're actually in charge of the business itself. A lot of entrepreneurs hate to give numbers, but if they're doing this, it's no problem. Just send a link. And the question really is, what do you know that others don't? What do you know that others don't? And that's competitive advantage. I'll elaborate on this a bit more tomorrow morning in my other talk. Oh yeah, and after the investment, so let's say that you've talked, you've done the dance, you've got an investment. There are kind of three basic ways that entrepreneurs communicate with their investors. Investor reports, quarterly report, monthly report, hey, this is what we're doing right now. Then of course, board meetings. Once a month, typically, and that's where you're kind of, a lot of board meetings are informative, but they should be the meetings where you actually ask the tough questions and ask help with the tough aspects of your business. But the daily and the weekly sparring is actually what we value the most, especially in the early stage. It's no use going to a board meeting and just saying, hey, this is what we do and that. It's the daily and weekly activities that really count in the investor communication. And overall, for a startup's journey, it's really about deal flow. You're pitching on stage. You are kind of out there, and you go into the investor's deal flow. Then you have to identify the right investor for you. And investors are trying to identify the right companies for them. After that, it's really signing the deal, and throughout the 6 to 10 year period, working together towards an exit. And this is the basic flow of how it goes. And this is the whole thing about 6 to 10 years, typically. And then, kind of to conclude, I have a few quotes that some entrepreneurs have said in the past year. And sometimes it's really hard not to laugh or have a poker face, because sometimes it's just unbelievable. I have 4 quotes here that I really liked. But we didn't invest. Well, they're called not a superhero quotes. The market is so hot right now that even a team like us can make it. And this is actual stuff that we've heard from a few. Or our biggest difference is to have an opportunity to make money in the future. When you hear these type of things, you know immediately that, hey, this isn't the case for us. We don't even have to be better than our competitors. We just have to be different. And my favorite of all, this company is competing with the Big Four. And what's your advantage? An advantage is that we sell our product cheaper than our biggest competitors. But the problem is that we're not making any money. And as an investor, I mean, if you take this with humor, it's fun, but sometimes when you meet, 100 startups, there are a few that say this stuff. So when you're talking to investors, be wary of those small sentences that you say, because every little detail tells something about your company. And this is just kind of a quick overview of, from our perspective, an early stage VC's perspective, on what VCs are, what do we look at, and how the VC market works. If you want to know more or have any questions, feel free to shoot an email, Kasper@superherocapital.com. I'd be happy to help and have a chat and elaborate a bit more as well. Thank you. Спасибо.
This is a certificate of appreciation for contribution to Tomsk IT community.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Do you invest in Russian startups?
Currently not.
Until what time? When Crimeans go back to Ukraine?
It's based on our LP contract. So the government is one of our biggest LPs, or one of our biggest investors, and we have to invest 85% to Finland only. But it depends on the fund as well. So now we're raising our second fund, and hopefully we're going to be able to get a little more wiggle room into the 15% and push that forward and get outside our region as well. But for this fund, we've looked only at the Nordics and the Baltics, but mostly Finland.
What about startup infrastructure? Not infrastructure, ecosystem. Is it a lot of startups How many? What do you think about the market of the Nordic countries? How many startups? Do you have something to choose? Or
Yeah, actually, there's quite a few. It depends on the country, but in Finland, it's really about, you know, really big, but we don't do gaming at all ourselves. Then health tech is starting to rise, and a lot of kind of AI and machine learning stuff as well. But I think one thing that really has helped the ecosystem in Finland is Slush, this conference that we have in November. Yeah, and I think like conferences like these as well are really good, because this is what kind of brings entrepreneurs and entrepreneurially minded people together. And I think the more activities we've had of this kind in Finland, the more startups we've gradually got all the time. But it's taken 10 years, at least. All right, thank you. Let's see what